5 scores! Rick Bond.
We've decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick Bond and Gary Madden.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 88 of the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, how are we keeping, my man?
Pretty good, Mike. Been up watching TV late the last few nights and slept in a little bit, but other than that, I'm doing fine.
Right, life is all good. Yeah, okay, perfect. And spring will be around the corner before you know it, and you'll be playing golf again.
Yeah.
It's all good. Well, our guest today, his name comes up a lot on this show, and you brought it up many times yourself. Selected in a 1980 draft by the Chicago Blackhawks, won an AHL Calder Cup in 82 with New Brunswick, won the Calder Rookie Cup trophy in 1983, played 884 consecutive games before a contract dispute interrupted the Ironman streak, still a record for most played with one team, won a Stanley Cup in 94 with their New York Rangers, won a Canada Cup in 91 playing for Canada, led the tourney in goals, played over 1,000 games at better than a point-a-game pace, including 441 goals, and for some strange reason isn't in the Hockey Hall of Fame. Please welcome Steve Larmer. Larms, thanks for joining us today, and how you keeping?
I'm keeping very, very good, thank you.
Where are you living, and what are you up to these days?
Well, I'm living in Peterborough right now, and I have a stepson, J.R. Avon, who's currently playing for the junior A team in town, the Peterborough Petes, and actually signed a contract with Philadelphia last fall after going to their development camp and training camp. So we've been watching him play hockey for the Petes this year.
Fantastic. Well,
that's pretty cool.
Hey, now before we start, Larms, Squid and I love nicknames. Now, you've got one fans may or may not be aware of. Larms is the obvious one with the shortening of your name. But this one was given to you in an early age in junior, and one you don't really give to young guys by the name of Gramps. Now, what's the story behind that moniker, and who gave that to you?
Well, Steve Ludzik gave it to me.
We knew that.
We were playing junior together in Niagara Falls, and I liked my sleep. I always brought my pillow on the bus, and I would lie down in the back seat and try to get some sleep either before the game or on the way home. And those guys sitting in front of me would always be yakking or playing cards or carrying on somehow, and I would always have to tell them to tone it down a little bit, be quiet, I need my sleep. So they started calling me Grandpa, the old man.
Oh, boy.
I was the only one on that team that ever got up and went to school in the morning.
No, okay, so that was a good thing anyway, that you were the one that got up and went to school and got your education. But what was it like playing for the Niagara Falls? What were you, Flyers back then?
Yeah, Niagara Falls Flyers. It was, it was different. I played my first year as a 16-year-old in Peterborough, and Gary Green was our coach, who went on to coach the Washington Capitals. I think at the age of 23 or 24, was the youngest coach in the NHL, and by far one of the best coaches and one of the most honest people I've ever met and played for. So when I went to Niagara Falls, it was, a different organization. It had just been sold and bought by Reg Quinn, and Bert Templeton was our coach our first year in Niagara Falls. And he was a great coach and a great motivator. And I think we had like 14 first-year players on that team. So there was a huge turnover, and Bert ended up getting us to the, we got to the finals, and we lost to Peterborough in the finals the year that they went on to win the Memorial Cup that year.
Yeah. Now, I mean, during those years, now you've mentioned his name already, you'd make friends with someone you'd be tied to for most of your career. Both had the same initials. They even got your NHL rookie cards mixed up that became collectibles as error cards, as I recall. And I'm, of course, referring to Steve Ludzik. Was he always a character with that sense of humor? And how much did he help you make the transition to playing in Niagara Falls?
Enormously helped me a lot. I mean, we lived together our first year. So, we drove to the rink every day, went to school, hung out, and we've been great friends ever since. I mean, we got 3 years of playing together in Niagara Falls. We both got drafted to Chicago and, played in Moncton together in the American League our first year of pro. We lived together down there, which was, quite an experience. And, and then played for years together in Chicago. So, we're pretty much tied at the hip.
Exactly. Yeah. I would say that, Squid.
Yeah. So, I mean, you go to Chicago, your first year, you win the Calder Trophy as a Rookie of the Year in the league, which has got to be outstanding for you that you were able to do that. And I'm sure with a lot of help from Ludzik as well and your teammates. But what was that like to go on and win the Calder Trophy as a Rookie of the Year?
Well, it was, unexpected for somebody that got drafted so late, I think. But at the same time, that year in the American League, I think really helped from a development standpoint. And, our coach that year was Orville Tessier. Captain of our team was Billy Riley, who had a huge influence on not only my career, but, Stevie Ludzik's career. So, we were in good hands down there. There was Mike Keenan was one of the guys. There was a bunch of Leafs that were playing down there at the time because it was a split team. They had moved most of their guys to Cincinnati in the I think it was the Central League back then. So all of their guys on one-way contracts like Mike Keenan and Dave Farish and guys that they didn't really have a whole lot of interest in at that time were down there with us, but they were great people and really took all of us young guys under their wing. And with Billy Riley and Dave Farish and Kaz and those guys that really helped us. And Orville Tessier was our coach that year. And we went on and we won the Calder Cup that year and won the American League Championship. And then Orville was named head coach of Chicago the next year. So I think he brought 5 or 6 of us along with him. Ludzik, myself, and a guy by the name of Dave Feemster, Jack O'Callahan, who played on that Miracle on Ice team, Bobby Janisak, the goalie, and whatnot. So I think having played for Orville that year in Moncton certainly helped, with making that transition to Chicago and having a coach that knew you and knew what you could do. And then, of course, putting me on that line with Dennis Savard and Al Secord was icing on the cake.
So you mentioned Bill Riley.
Yeah.
So this is how small the world is and how close the hockey world is. When I was a kid in Amherst, Nova Scotia, Bill Riley was playing for the Junior Ramblers in Amherst, Nova Scotia, and I used to go to the games and watch him play. And that is how amazingly small the hockey world is.
Well, it is a small world, and I can't tell you the influence that he had on me and Ludzik and all of us young guys. I mean, we got down there the first day we walked in the dressing room. He come over and he shook our hands and he said, welcome to the Maritimes. There ain't no time like a Maritime.
Well, I have to agree with him on that.
And he was absolutely right. I mean, we had a real tight team and a bunch of really good guys that all kind of gelled and we ended up, I think the commissioner of the American League at the time, at the beginning of the year, looking at our team and how it was set up with a bunch of young guys from Chicago and all the old guys from Toronto that they really didn't want, he told the organization that, you know, these guys will be lucky if they win 15 games this year, if they don't make some changes. And, you know, we ended up winning the whole thing. So you just don't know, you know, and that's the thing about, you know, having a bunch of guys and throwing them into a dressing room, and people from all over the country and all walks of life, you know, Americans, Canadians, Westerners, Easterners, you know, it worked. We had a great group of guys, and we had a lot of fun that year and ended up winning.
So now after you win, you end up, now Orville Teste moved with you. And obviously, as we talked about, I mean, he watched you play probably close to 100 games. So he knew you well, and that gave you an opportunity to move up, which you earned. Now you got paired with Dennis Savard and Al Secord. When did that actually take place? And, you know, you guys, it takes times for players to mesh as a unit. When did you sort of sense that you really had something going?
Well, we were in training camp, and I think, you know, it was getting down to the nitty gritty or whatever. And it was like, okay, it looks like probably going to go. They had moved their team from Moncton to Springfield, Massachusetts, I think. So it was looking like, well, probably a good chance I'm going to go here. But, you know, Orville was always in my corner, and he would come over. He talked to me one day about 2 weeks into training camp. Because back then, training camp was usually about 3 weeks to a month long. You actually went to training camp to get in shape. You didn't show up in shape. So he said, listen, I'm going to try you with Dennis and Al. I think that, you know, Timmy Higgins had played there the year before, and I think that we can get more goals out of that side with you, because I know you can score, and you're pretty responsible defensively. So, you know, we're going to give you probably the last 3 or 4 exhibition games in the first 4 or 5 games of the regular season to see how it goes. And if it goes well, you'll stay here. And if it doesn't, you're probably going to go to Springfield. So I was like, okay, this is my chance.
Yep.
Door's a little bit open. So, you know, take advantage of it. And I think I did that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I was going to say, you know, what were some of the highlights from your first year around the league when you finally did make it that year? Did you even get to enjoy it, or are you just worried about staying in the lineup?
Well, I think, well, you know, playing with Tony Esposito.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, honest to God, I tell this to people all the time. I mean, I played with him for my first 2 years, and I called him Mr. Esposito. You'd come in after the game, and there'd be a case of beer in the middle of the dressing room, and you'd walk over and grab one, and, you know, I'd walk over and I'd go, that was a great game, Mr. Esposito. And he would look at me and he'd go, don't call me Mr. Esposito, call me Tony. Yeah, okay, Mr. Esposito. But in having, you know, just the original 6 teams, and I mean, Tony was a childhood idol, and I mean, anybody that played ball hockey back in the day, when you played net, you were Tony Esposito, and you played that butterfly style and all of that. So it was, you know, to be able to play with him and get to know him, becomes friends with him. And, you know, Stan Mikita was around the rink a lot then, even though he had retired the year before, you know, but to get to go for lunch, you know, with Tony and Stan and, you know, Keith Magnuson and Cliff Coral, and to listen to the stories. And it was just, I think, you know, just being around that generation of players was really cool for me, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think that probably that must have been a great thing for you guys to have those guys around. I mean, we didn't in Toronto back then with Harold Ballard. I mean, he wouldn't even allow any of the alumni guys to enter the rink or anything. And then you go to Montreal and you see all the great Montreal Canadians sitting right behind their bench, and you go to Chicago and you see Stan Mikita and these guys walking around, and it's kind of like, wow, like that's pretty cool. But in Toronto, we weren't allowed to see these guys because they weren't allowed to come around the rink.
Well, and I think that's, you know, part and parcel to it. How great would it have been when you were in Toronto with, you know, Davey Keon and Bobby Brown and Frank Mahalis and all these great Leafs that won Stanley Cups, you know, are around, and, you know, you get a chance to pick their brain and talk to them. And, you know, these are the people that have, you know, we're walking in their shoes, so to speak, and they understand what you go through as a professional athlete, and they can help you with you know, the mental side of it, the physical side of it, somebody to talk to that actually has been there and done it. And for me, it was just a great experience to experience that in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that would be invaluable to have people like that around. I mean, I would have loved to have been able to sit down and have lunch with them and talk to them, or, you know, just pick their brains. I mean, it probably would have helped me a lot as a young player in the National Hockey League.
Oh, no question about it. And I think, you know, all those guys, and I mean, even the teammates you have, like you know, the Dougie Wilsons and the Bob Murrays and the Daryl Sutters and the Tommy Lysiaks and Rich Preston and all these older guys that were, you know, when I first started out, that they were, you know, they were always there to help you. You know, you know, if your head was getting a little bit too big, they were the first ones to bring you right back down to earth. And then when things weren't going well, they were the first guys to come over and pick you up and make you feel better about yourself. And yeah, I always say, you know, you're like a product of society, right? And,
okay.
And the people that, you know, are around you and have these kinds of influences on you are invaluable, I think.
Okay, for the record, Doug Wilson isn't that much older than you or me, so.
Well, he was always the elder statesman. His nickname was always the Senator.
He just acted older than us, that's all.
well, he had played, you know, I mean, you're looking at, you know, the veterans that are on your team and the leaders, and, you know, Dougie was a leader when at a very young age when he first came in there.
Yeah.
You know, he had great mentorship, and Keith Magnuson and Stan Mikita. Stan Mikita was his first roommate. So, you know, you have all these influences on you from these older guys that you know, you learn from, and then as you become older, you get to pass these things down to the younger kids that are coming in.
Now, Steve, I was going to say the Hawks enjoyed some success early in your career. Tessier seemed to have you guys pointed in the right direction, but that Oilers team led by that skinny kid for Brantford always seemed to get in your way.
Yeah, why was that? It was, yeah, it was. We always, I swear to God, I think that every year from, I think my first year, 82, 83 on, whoever we lost to in the West, in the, you know, the two divisions that were there at that time, went on to the Stanley Cup Finals. So we lost to Edmonton. I think we lost to Calgary the year they went on and won the Stanley Cup. We lost to Minnesota when they went on to win the Stanley Cup and get to the finals those 2 years. So it was always one team or another, but Edmonton, I think 5 or 6 times. And I can remember the one year that we did beat Edmonton out, I think in 1990, or I think it was 1990. It was like, holy mackerel, what a, you know, 8 or 9 years of trying to do this, and we finally got over the hump. It was like, in essence, a Stanley Cup win for us.
Now,
do you remember the series you played against us, the best of 5 in the first round, where you finished about 40-some points ahead of us, and we swept you guys?
Yeah. Well, that's the funny thing about the playoffs, right? Is that you never know, and your upsets are always going to happen in the first round when you think you can, you know, you can just throw your sticks out there and you're going to win hockey games. Well, you forget that there's another team out there and they've got some pride, and, you know, you're happy to be in the playoffs and there's really no pressure on you. Just go play.
Now, why didn't it last for Tessier? He had such success wherever he went before. And how much did the heart transplant comment that he made about you guys that one time, how much did that really hurt his cause?
Well, I think it cost him a lot, those comments that he did make. And then, you know, I mean, I think the first 2 games we played in there that year, I think we lost I don't know. They were I think the 2 games, the total goals were probably, I think they scored probably 16 or 17 goals, and we scored 3 and we lost. And I think if you were to look at puck possession, we actually scored more goals per puck possession than they did, because they had the puck 55 minutes of the game. It wasn't fair, but I mean, they had probably the 5 best players in the world at the time, with Wayne and Mark and Yari Curry and, you know, Glenn Anderson, Grant Fuhr and Andy Mogan net. They had Paul Coffey and Charlie Huddy and, you know, Dr. Greg. And I mean, they were a good team. Glenn Sather did a fabulous job of putting it together, and the style that they played at the time was, you know, unlike any other. So, and they had some real toughness on their team too. So it wasn't like they were just all skill and everything, you know, with Marty and Dave Semenko, you know, Hunter. They were good.
Now, I was going to ask you, now just sticking with the Tessé story here a little bit. I mean, did he change? Now, you played with him on the AHL and the NHL. Did he change his approach to coaching from the AHL to the NHL in your view? And if he didn't, should he have? And Squid, you can pipe in here, because what is it you guys actually do look for in a coach?
Well, I don't think he changed the way he coached from, you know, it's hard when a new coach comes in, and the older players, I think, are the ones that have the toughest time adjusting, right? Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you're bringing in 6 or 7 new players, you know, that year, and everyone's kind of, oh, well, if they're keeping him, then I guess my ice time is going to get cut down, and all of that stuff. And it starts to play with you. So you're not as open to change as, you know, the young guys are coming in hungry, and this is my chance, and I'm going to prove myself. And I think, you know, a lot of the older guys maybe at that time really weren't, you know, going to buy into it. And, you know, and ultimately, you know, that was probably part of it. And the fact that, you know, what he said about the heart transplants and stuff like that. But, you know, it's I think, you know, Orville was good at holding people accountable. And you know, I mean, at the end of the day, you're really not playing for your coach. You're playing for your teammates. So I'll leave it at that.
Squid?
So, I mean, I liked Orville. I had Orville. I know he coached in Cornwall when I was in Sherbrooke, but I played in the World Juniors, and there was several coaches, and he was the one from the Quebec League. And at the start of it, they told us that, okay, every game we're going to start with 4 lines, and then if it's a close game, we may whittle it down to 3 lines, or we may take someone off one line, put them on another line. Well, that never happened. It was all 3 Quebec guys, Rick Patterson, Daly, and myself. We never got to play in the second or third periods in any of the games, and I know that really bothered Orville. He came to us after the tournament and said, boys, I'm really sorry, but that wasn't the way it was supposed to happen. You guys deserve to play a little bit more. And I thought that was great that he took the time to explain that to us.
Oh, he was a really good communicator, and it wasn't, you know, it wasn't like when you walked into his office or whatever, he was yelling and screaming at you. He talked to you like you were a man. So here, you know, we're man to man, and, you know, sometimes you don't like what you hear, but at least you're getting the truth, or that version of the truth. But like you said, at least he took the time to explain it to you, and that it wasn't supposed to happen that way. But ultimately, you know, there's other people sometimes above them that are making decisions too.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, maybe now, you know, Larms, talk about some of these string of coaches that followed behind him: Bob Pulford, Bob Murdoch, Mike Keenan, and then Daryl Sutter. You had a variety of them.
Well, I had a variety of them. I think I had Pulley probably 2 or 3 times. Because when he would fire a coach, he would you know, take over for however many games until he could find his replacement or whatever. But that's funny, because there's one time Billy Gardner hurt his knee one time, tore the ligaments in his knee, and he was wearing, you know, back in the old days where they actually MCL or whatever, where they had to cut you open and put you in a cast and stuff like that. So we were playing in LA one day, and Billy had fired a coach, and he was talking or coaching us at the time, and Billy was coming back from rehab. So part of Billy's rehab was Pulley grabbed a chair, brought it out to center ice with a cup of coffee and a cigarette, and sat there, drank his coffee and smoked his cigarette and blew the whistle, rehabbing Billy Gardner on the ice doing laps and stops and starts and all that kind of stuff. So that was like old-time hockey.
Oh, boy. He was quite a character, Pulley, I can tell you that.
Yeah, he was. I mean, all of them. And we had Bob Murdoch for a little while, and and then Mike Keenan came in, and he was there for quite a while, actually. And then Daryl Sutter took over from Mike.
Well, yeah. I was going to say to you, I'll go back to Pulford. I mean, if you were called Gramps, he would be Grumps.
Oh, he was always grumpy.
So, how was your relationship with him? I know, Squid, you kind of had an off and on one with him, but how about you, Lars?
Well, I had a pretty good. I mean, I had a pretty good relationship with him. I mean, it was always, trying to get money out of Pulley was like, trying to squeeze blood out of a rock. But I think at the end of the day, I mean, he was like a father figure, I think, to a lot of the young guys that were on that team. And, at the end of the day, he always thought he knew what was best for you. Yeah. He was wrong. But I think at the end of the day, he really cared, but as a player, sometimes you got to voice your opinion too. And, I wasn't scared to speak up to him either. So.
Well, it's kind of funny because he looked after Wirtz's money like it was his own.
Well, he squeezed. He was so tight with the Wirtz's money when he squeezed the nickel, the beaver shit.
Oh yeah. Well, I remember because my contract after I got traded to Chicago after that first year, and we had a good year that year. I got to play with you and Savvy. Yeah. And I think all of us had over 40 goals. And anyway, my contract was over. He offered me a $40,000 pay cut, and so Bill Waters called him. He finally got an arbitration date. Pulley said, Bill, it's going to happen if he goes to arbitration. And Bill said, yeah, you're going to trade him. No big deal. 2 days later, I had a new contract with a raise. I couldn't believe it. It was like, why did this take all summer,
Well, everything's done at the last minute to make you sweat, right?
Yeah.
That's like when you got traded, my contract was up, and I said, well, I heard Ricky Vive makes $100,000 more than me. So I play on the same line with him. We have the same numbers, and I kill penalties. I should make more.
Well, I don't disagree with you on that.
And he looked at me and he says, well, I didn't do that contract. That's a contract we inherited from the trade. And I was like, well, okay, so how is that my problem?
Well, the truth is they did inherit it, but it ran out after that first year.
Yeah.
They had to re-sign me, so he was lying to you.
Well, yeah, he had it. Yeah. Well, how do you know back then, right?
Now, how about Mike Keenan? Now, his name comes up a lot every show. I think you're our 88th one, Steve, and I think there's been 87 stories at least come up from Keenan every time somebody's on the air. You must have a story. And now, listen, you come from a different angle because you had him in Chicago. You won a Stanley Cup with him with the Rangers, and you won a Canada Cup with him in '91. So you must be one of the few guys who enjoyed some success with them. But having said that, I can't imagine it was stress-free.
Oh, it was totally stress-free. It was, playing for Mike was like being on a deserted island. I probably played I probably played more games for Mike than he probably coached me more than he had any other player, I think, because I had him for what did I have him for 5 or 6 years in Chicago, and then I had him in New York, and a little bit with the Canada Cup and everything. But the first 2 years was living hell. I mean, you wanted to murder him.
Tell me about it.
Well, yeah, it was just so different. Even the first day of training camp, you come walking back into the old Chicago Stadium, and our pool room and our lounge was gone, and it was now the training room and the storage room where all the equipment, the extra equipment, and the sticks and all that were stored. Well, it was now a weight room, and it was like state of the art. And you're walking in at training camp, and you're looking around, going, "Oh shit, this is going to be quite the ride." Right? It's a lot different. And I can remember, practices. His practices, he never practiced long. His practices were never more than 60 minutes. But they were a very intense 60 minutes. It was, you're going to practice as hard as you play, or you're going to play as hard as you practice, and you're going to practice hard. And that we did. And then it was into the gym after for, a pretty strenuous workout after that. So there was a lot of that went on the first year and whatnot. And I mean, I can remember we lost a game in Detroit one night, and I don't know, we got blown out 9-1 or 11-2 or who knows what it was. But, and that was before we were chartering. So, we got to get up the next morning, and we're practicing in Detroit before we fly back home. And we're out there practicing, I think, from 9 to 10 o'clock before, the Red Wings are out there practicing. Well, we had 60 minutes with no pucks. There was nothing but down and backs and sideboards for 60 straight minutes, and then at the end of 60 minutes, you get called in, and you're, somebody's leading the stretch or whatever at center ice, and he's just skating around everybody. And he says, "You know what?" He said, "You had your chance to work for 60 minutes last night. You didn't do it. Well, you worked for 60 minutes tonight. So just remember that." Right. And then skate it off. But we had many of those practices, many. I mean, one of your first practices, Squid, in the stadium. It was painful.
Well, I remember the one in particular where our line was together with some other guys at each, and there was guys at each end, and we had to go down and back, and Denny kept turning at the boards instead of stopping.
Yeah, he wouldn't stop.
And so every time we came back, he'd blow the whistle and say, "Go again." So we just kept going one after another, and I think we went about 14 times in a row.
Yeah.
And finally, Doug Wilson grabbed Savvy and threw him up against the boards and said, "Stop!" at the end. Anyway, I was cramping up, laying on the ice, and my legs were cramped up and everything. It was kind of crazy. But I will say, as much as I didn't agree with how he kind of handled everything, Mike was a pretty darn good coach, and he was good on the bench. He ran the bench well. And the team was always prepared going into a game.
Yeah, no, he was. And, after the first 2 years and stuff like that, I mean, I have a lot of appreciation for what he did for me in my career and having chosen me to play in the Canada Cup and having, putting me on a line with Wayne Gretzky. And, it was just a fabulous experience for me. And then, when things kind of went south in Chicago, and, he was a big reason I got traded to the New York Rangers, and having the opportunity to win a Stanley Cup in that city was fabulous and all for us. So I owe a lot to, Mike and, for pushing me to become a better player.
So, well, let's go back to that just before you get to that. Like September 3rd, 1987, the Hawks moved your longtime winger, L.C. Cord, along with popular Eddie Olchuk, a local guy, for the guy we're talking with, Bob McGill and Steve Thomas. What was your initial thoughts besides the fact this Squid guy's making $100,000 more a year than you?
Well, American too.
Fahrenheit brother. Yeah.
Well, it's always sad to see, and that's the problem with that business. It's there's a group of guys that come up together, and then 3 or 4 years down the road, slowly but surely they all start to get traded away or retire or do whatever. But it was sad to see Al go, because Al was, Al is a great guy. Number one, he's a fabulous person. And, he had a couple of 50-goal years with us. And he brought a lot of toughness and net presence and all of that with him, right? And you're always sad to see your teammates go.
Yep.
At any particular time, no matter who they are. You spend time with them in the locker room, you become, the one big happy family. And it was sad to see him go. And I always tell people now, it's like, the saddest thing is, or not the saddest thing, but the one thing you can say about Al, he's probably the last guy that scored 50 goals in a year and had 35 fights in a year. Teams don't even have 35 fights now. So, but it's just an amazing, to be able to have that much of a physical presence and then that much skill to score goals too. And I think that in itself is absolutely incredible.
And Squid going the other way.
I would think probably at that point in time in his career, though, Larms, would you say that, I think when he got to Toronto, John Brophy really wanted him because of his toughness and that. I think he was kind of, at that point in his career, was kind of finished with that. I think he was at the point where he didn't want to do that anymore. Would that be accurate?
Oh, I think so. I think when you've done it for as long as he had done it for, and the amount of fights year in and year out over the, at some point in time, it's why would you want to do it? Who would want to do it in the first place? Let alone, be expected to do it. And, you're called upon on a nightly basis to, you're our tough guy. You're the guy that has to do it, right? As opposed to having it spread out a little bit. But, you get those guys that get tired of it. And I don't think Al was, like you said, I don't think he was, really wanting to do it as much anymore.
Now, moving on, the summer of 1990, Dennis Savard's moved for Chris Chelios. Were you now thinking, now there's 2/3 of your original line gone, but you're, of course, playing with Squid. But what was at that point you were thinking yourself, maybe the end was coming near for you as a Hawk?
Well, I think, when you look around the dressing room, you're like, I don't really know anybody anymore. That thought does kind of slip into your mind, but it happens. I mean, teams evolve, and you can never, it never remains the same. And after a while, you get kind of, cold to it in a sense, and it's like, all these new players coming in and whatnot. And it's not that you don't like them or you don't want to be around them or anything. It's just that you don't want to make friends with them because, it's going to get ended, via trade, whether it's you or them. And we went through it, with in the early 80s with guys like, Ricky Patterson, you had mentioned. He was there in Chicago early on. And Billy Gardner gets traded, and all these guys that you come up with, Stevie Ludzik, and at the end of the day, Dougie Wilson ends up leaving, who I would have thought would have been a Hawk forever. Bobby Murray and all these guys. So you kind of take a look around and you go, if it can happen to Tony Esposito, it can happen to anybody. And at the end of the day, it does. So you kind of just get a little bit colder towards, getting too close to some of the new guys when they come in.
So, Larms, I want to take you back to when you and I played together. Like, one of the things I remember is I wouldn't say we had a competition, but we always went to the rink early, you and I. And I think one time I remember saying to you, like, why don't we just grab a cab together? Why waste money on 2 cabs? But I remember, I can remember trying to beat the other guy to the rink before a game, and then we'd sit in the stands, tape our sticks. I believe we were both smoking cigarettes at the time. And I think finally, we decided.
You were smoking my cigarettes.
No. Come on. I think Bob Murdoch called us a Marlboro line, if I'm not mistaken, at one point.
Yes, he did. I would have been rather have called the dart line, because that would have insinuated that we were really quick. I don't think that was the case.
Well, at that time when Savard was moved, did you notice that his game was slipping a little bit? Now, this is not a knock on him, but you had your best year the year he left.
Well, no, I mean, I love Dennis's. I mean, I say it's. I don't think he gets the
respect
accolades that he deserves during that era, because there were so many. There was Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier and Dale Hawerchuk and Brian Trottier, and I mean, there were a lot of great players, but Dennis was the one guy, no matter where we were playing, on the road or at home, when he got that puck, people stood up, because something great was going to happen. He was like a little water bug out there that just was darting all around. It was hard to hit. He was a great passer and a playmaker, and off the ice, one of the most generous guys you're ever going to meet in your life. So I don't think he was, his skill set was diminishing as much as I think Mike Keenan's want for a guy like Chris Chelios and his reputation and how he played on the edge all the time and stuff like that.
Yeah, I remember, speaking of Dennis, I remember getting traded there. We moved into the development where he lived, and him and Mona, his wife, really helped us a lot, especially my wife, finding showing in different places where she had to go to get things and stuff like that. So they were great people, and I had a lot of fun with you and Savvy there for the year and a half that I was there. I thought he was a great guy. That you're right. I don't think he got enough credit for how good he was. Like that night, I think we were playing Edmonton at home. He geeked, I think, everybody on Edmonton out, including 2 guys twice, and scored a goal. Like, it was unbelievable. Like, we were just kind of standing there on the ice watching him do it.
Yeah, it was a shorthanded goal. They still play it on PSN, right? One of the top 10 goals.
Yeah.
And it was shorthanded, and I remember jumping on the ice near the end of it, and I think he beat Kevin Lowe 3 times on that shift. But it was, you were right. It was one of those moments where, I jumped on the ice and kind of stopped there at the blue line and watched the last 10 seconds because it was beautiful. And I played with him for 500 or 600 games, and I'm lucky I had the best seat in the house because I got to see that every night.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in 1993, your tenure in Chicago comes to an end. How did that all come about?
Well, it was
Mike Keenan. He wanted him in New York.
Oh, let him tell the story.
Well, Squid's right.
Well, that's we want to hear the story.
Well, actually, I got traded to Hartford for 30 seconds, but it was, something we've talked about for the last 30 minutes is that over time, right, everybody's gone.
Yeah.
And you're looking around going, okay, well, I'm old and this team's getting younger and it needs, you need to change and it needs to evolve. And I get that. So it was like, there's no point in coming back if we're going to be that team that's like stuck in neutral. We're not going forward and we're not going backwards. We're just going to be a team that gets into the playoffs maybe wins a round or two, and then we're done, right? And that's not really what you want. So, my thought was, it's like, it's time to get out of here. Mike had left, and Daryl was coaching, and I had played for Daryl. He had coached the year before, and, that was my first year of playing for him. And, I mean, we lived basically kitty corner from each other for 6 years while we played together in Chicago. We drove to the rink every day for practice and to the airport and all of that. And then for me, it was way too hard to play for him, having, that player-player relationship as opposed to player-coach relationship. I just, it was uncomfortable for me, and it was not a situation I wanted, to put myself in or him. And, it was probably better with the way everything was going that, I asked to be traded, and I asked to be traded in April of that year after I think we got beat out by Minnesota. And, it took until I don't think Pulley believed me when I, told him about a week after the season that it was probably good for a change and time for me to move on. And, if I go to a really young team that's really bad, that's good too, because at least I can help mentor some players and, help them out off the ice. Or, you go to a team that's maybe got a legitimate chance to win. So it turned out really well for me.
So I want to, Larmer, let's go back to the coaches for a minute, and Daryl and Bob Murdoch. I don't know if you recall in St. Louis in the playoffs when I think it was the first time I ever saw Bob Murdoch get mad, and he started screaming and yelling in the dressing room after the first period of the last game of the series. And then they get locked in that room across from us, and they had to take the forklift out and open the door. And so we were on the ice, and I remember saying, I think the referees were saying, "Where are the coaches?" And I can't remember who it was on the team said, "Don't worry about it. Let's just drop the puck and get going. We don't need them anyway."
Yeah, I know. Why would they take a forklift to a perfectly good door?
I don't know.
No, I remember that. Well, he was so mad at us, right? He went stomping back into the room that they were staying in there, and he slammed the door shut, and it jammed. Yeah. So, yeah, I can remember that. The ref was like, "Oh, don't worry about them. They quit."
Yeah, we wanted to go ahead and play without them, and the referee said, "No, well, you can't do that."
Yeah, well, there's. I mean, it's a different world now. Thank God.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Lawrence, before you went to New York, you played in the 1991 Canada Cup. Now, this one guy I want to talk about on that team, he ended up being your captain in New York, Mark Messier. What was the redeeming quality of him that stuck with you before you went to New York? And was that sort of an influence in you to have you go to New York when you did end up going there?
Well, I mean, I didn't have any choice where I went because I actually got traded to Hartford. And then from Hartford, I got traded to New York. But, I mean, playing in the Canada Cup with that whole team, I mean, with Wayne and Mark and, a bunch of guys from Chicago were there, Eddie Belfour and Dirk Graham, and Steve Smith played in Edmonton, and he ended up getting traded to Chicago. So Brent Sutter was there. So, there was a comfort level with those guys, but it was really cool playing with Wayne, like, having that opportunity to be on the same ice with him and the same line and whatnot. And, obviously one of the highlights of my career for sure was, the experience of playing in that tournament.
Okay. Well, here you go. This may sound like a dumb question, but playing with Gretz, is it hard? Like, explain to the listeners, it's not as easy as everybody thinks it is playing with a guy like that, because a player of that level, and you're an elite player yourself, but they're 2 or 3 steps ahead of everybody else. So if you're not ready, things can go real sour real fast.
Well, yeah, you got to, and always, like I tell the young lad now, I mean, the one thing about playing hockey and when you're playing with really good players is, you always have to expect the unexpected. Things are going to happen when somebody's going to put the puck right in the sweet spot, and you better be ready for it. And it's going to be coming. It could be coming from anywhere. And I mean, I think, having had the opportunity to play with Dennis Savard for so many years, because he kind of played that way too. He was, a speedy guy, but he could stop on a dime and turn, and a lot of plays were like that, where we're coming in late or whatever, and Dennis would just lay the puck across the ice and let you skate into it. And so for me, playing with Wayne, it was a lot similar, very similar to playing with Dennis. But it's like every day you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I'm playing with Wayne. I can't sleep. Probably smoking 3 packs of cigarettes a day. You're just so nervous, because it's like, you just don't want to let anybody down. And it was a relief when it was over. but it was a ton of fun.
Yeah, I bet it was. And what Mike brought up, I mean, I remember my whole career, with the exception of the year I played with you and Dennis, where I had a centerman that would, like you say, would go east-west a lot more, and you had to be patient. But I played with Wayne in the World Championships, and I remember, I think they put us together for like one game. I went offside 2 or 3 times because he turned up to make a play, and I kept going because that's what I was used to doing. And then the next thing I know, I'm not playing with him anymore, and it was like, oh, okay, well, that didn't go so well.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. I think playing with Dennis really helped me prepare for playing with Wayne in that tournament. So, and then, of course, playing with Mark, and we had, he's just the leadership, from a leadership standpoint. I mean, there's no other guy in that sense. And he's not really a guy that I don't think says a whole lot, but when he does say something, people listen. And, he leads by example. I remember the one year in the playoffs when I was with Chicago, and I thought we were into Edmonton. I think we split the game. We split games in Edmonton. It was 1-1 coming back to Chicago, and I think we won game 3, and then game 4 we lost. And I always talk to Jeff Buckham about this, because it was like he was possessed that night. I said, Book, what did he say to, before the game or whatever? Or just did he say anything? And he's like, no, he didn't say anything. The only thing he said was, we can't take penalties against this team because their power play is too good. So we got to stay out of the penalty box. So the very first shift of the game, he cross-checks Dougie Wilson across the head with his stick, breaks it, gets a 2-minute penalty. Right? Comes out of the box, and something else happens where he breaks the stick slashing somebody, breaks it in half, slashing somebody. 2 minutes for slashing. Right? So he's the guy taking the first 2 penalties. Do you think anybody that changed the whole series? I mean, when you looked at him that night, you weren't even there. He looked right through you. It was the most incredible thing I ever said, because I always talk to Boog about it. It's like, holy mackerel. I never seen it was possessed almost to that point, right? But just an incredible leader and an incredible player.
So years later, Larms, you go to New York, then he makes a guarantee, like going into, what was it, Game 6, I believe, in New Jersey.
Yeah.
So we are going to be coming back for Game 7 in New York. What did you think of that? And did that put any pressure on the team, or did that lighten things up, or anything like that?
Well, I'm just thankful he scored the hat trick that night. Like you talk about, when you make that kind of a promise, but then when you perform like that, come on, that's made in movies, right? That doesn't happen in real life. But he, and I mean, we had an incredible team, that year with, we had, Kevin Lowe and Jeff Bukaboom. We had a bunch of guys from Edmonton that had won multiple cups, and Craig McTavish and Glenn Anderson, and, along with Mark. And it was, just the steadiness of the, the process that we went through, I think, to win it. And when, because we had a great regular season. I think we won the President's Cup, and then we went into Long Island. We beat them 4 straight. Our next series was against Washington. We beat them in 5 games, and then we go and we play New Jersey. So, and that game went, that series went 7 games. So there were some games in there that were really tight and some momentum changes and stuff like that. But, they were always, calm, cool, and collective throughout the whole process. I mean, there were, in our dressing room, we could have lost 10-0 the night before, and it was no different than if we lost 1-0, or if we won 1-0, or if we won 10-0. So there was this calmness about it, and preparation and getting ready for all those games, which was a really cool thing to be part of.
Now, Larms, was it true that Keenan was playing head games with Brian Leach, and then Messier stepped in and told him to lay off him?
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there were all kinds of –
yeah.
I mean, there were all kinds of things where I think Mark went to went to Mike and said, just stay out of the way. Don't get in the way. Don't ruin this. And I can – where my seat in the dressing room in Madison Square Gardens was, I could see down this – there was this little hallway that led into the change room and where the showers were, and like the coach's office were on the other side of the hallway. So they come in through the change room and they'd be coming down the hallway. And I had this perfect seat, and Mark sat right across from me by the doorway there. And I could see Mike coming in, and you could hear these, foot stomps, and, holy shit, he's going to just lay into us, right? And then, Mark all of a sudden would get up and start talking about what we need to do and blah, blah, blah. And then slowly Mike would slow down, and he would stop, and he would listen for a couple of seconds, and he'd turn around and leave the room, right? And it was like, thank God, Mark, you got up and said something, because you're here. And we've been walking out the dressing room feeling about 2 inches tall, but he had that uncanny knack for saying the right things at the right times, right? So, I mean, it was just an incredible experience. And then, the opportunity to play with, guys, it was almost like it wasn't unfair with Brian Leach and Zuboff on the point. I mean, they had the puck on a string, and, you try to kill a penalty against those two where, it was embarrassing. Thank God they were on our side. But, it was Adam Graves, and just an incredible experience and a great city to win in.
Hey, any memorable moments from winning the cup during the celebration?
No, just I mean, it's a journey. It's 2 months of living hell with playing almost every other night and stuff like that. And I always say, like, it's painful to win, and you're exhausted and tired and extremely sore when it's all over. So, but well worth it in the end. And we couldn't have had a better group of guys to win it with.
So, Larms, before we get close to the end here,
yes, yeah,
I've always said, and Mike's heard me say it, I don't know how many countless times, that I think that you probably were the most underrated player in the National Hockey League. I mean, I don't even hear your name brought up for the Hall of Fame every year, which is ridiculous to me when you think of what you did as a player. Over a point a game, won the Calder Trophy as a Rookie of the Year, won a Stanley Cup, and they don't even mention your goddamn name. I don't get it. Like, it bothers me.
Well, that doesn't bother me.
Well, it bothers me because I got to play with you, and I got to watch you play and play against you, and there's no doubt in my mind that you deserve to be there, and it bothers me every year when I don't even hear your name brought up as potentially going into the Hall of Fame. Like, that just drives me crazy. I got to give Lanny a call and let him know.
No, it's, you know, it is what it is, right? So you can't go back and change anything. And you know, at the end of the day, I hope that, you know, the most important thing is that I was a good teammate and tried to show up and do the best that I could every night, and you know, and have the respect of your teammates, and that's all that really matters. So I'm real happy with that.
Well, that you did, and for sure, you had the backing of your teammates and the respect of your teammates, and you did everything else too. So I love the opportunity to play with you, and hopefully I get down that way at some point, and we get together and shoot the crap.
Yeah, go play a round of golf with Big Daddy.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, he's up that way now. So yeah, that sounds good to me.
Well, we want to thank you for being with us for so long. Just got a couple minutes left here. And by the way, your name does come up a lot on the show from players, and they all echo the same sentiments that Squid mentioned too. And to a man, they basically say that. So good on you.
Thank you.
But speaking of your teammates, money real buddies, we've talked about a few times now. Billy Gardner wanted me to highlight a couple with you to see if you refresh your memory. And you talked about that Edmonton series against where he got hurt his knee. He reminded us, Antonio, you've mentioned also, there was a Antonio incident apparently where you went back fishing with him one day with you guys, and Billy was in the cast, and you were in charge of putting the downriggers lures on and all this, and you were circling around Lake Michigan, and you weren't catching anything for a reason. Do you remember that story?
Well, I don't think Billy put any bait on the hooks.
Well, he blames you.
Yeah. No.
And they were dragging along the ground of the or the bottom of the lake.
Well, they might have been dragging around with a couple of Miller Lights. It might have had something to do with it.
Well, he did mention that too. There was quite a few of those. The other one I wanted to remind you about was when you guys were rookies in the Memorial Cup, and this is a good one, Squid. How about this? Like playing in the Sault Sudbury. They were on a bus that was going back and forth, but it was a 3-hour trip, and the bus broke down, so they had to hitchhike. Do you remember that night you had to do that?
Oh yeah, we played a game in Sault Ste. Marie, and we were on our way back to Sudbury, and you know, we were playing in the finals and whatnot, right? And our bus ran out of gas. I think it broke down. I think it ran out of gas about 20 miles outside of Sudbury, right? So Gary Green and Dick Todd, the coach and the trainer, and you know, they're sleeping on the front of the bus or whatever, and slowly but surely, like everybody's getting off the bus. The sun's starting to come up, and everyone's getting off the bus and hitchhiking into the hotel. So Greener and you know, Dick Todd wake up, and they're like, "Where the hell did everybody go?" He said, "Well, they're all friggin' hitchhiked it back into town or whatever." So there was like myself and Terry Bovair and Billy Gardner. I think we're the only three. We were the last three on the bus because Terry Bovair and myself weren't playing a whole lot, but Billy was, right? But he hung out with us because he's a good guy. So anyways, Dick and Greener get off the bus and they hitchhike into town, but their ride could only take them halfway before their turn off. So after they left, Billy and I and Terry, you know, we get out there and we hitchhike. So we get picked up by this guy in a half-ton. So there's 4 of us sitting in the front seat of the half-ton. And we drive by Greener and Dick on the side of the road, right? They still got 5 miles to go. So Bo and I are kind of like waving at them, right? Like there's no room in here. So you're on your own. So anyways, we get back to the hotel, sleep, whatever, practice. The final game of the Memorial Cup, we're playing New Westminster or whatever. Well, obviously, Terry Bovair and myself find ourselves sitting in the stands again. Was it because we left the coaches on the side of the road, or because we waved at them politely? But that's
why didn't you just throw them in the back of the truck and Get in the back, boys.
Yeah. Well, we thought that, but forget it. We'll find a ride.
Larmer, we want to thank you again for all the time you spent with us. You've been a great guest, and thanks for the great stories. And best of luck to your stepson moving forward, and hope he does well. And Squid, you guys will get a game hopefully this summer.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, well, Squid, it's always great to see you.
All right, Paul. We'll get together this summer and play some golf.
Yeah, and thanks, Mike, for everything. It's been a blast.
Hey, great. Thanks for coming on. Thanks.